Good day, everyone. My name is Layne Robinson, and I'm Head of Social Policy at the Commonwealth Secretariat. In our section, we focus on youth development alongside education, health, and sport development. Today, I want to speak to you about something which is extremely important to me, important to our organization, and important to young people all over the world, especially now as we are emerging from the pandemic and are thinking about the kind of world we want to live in. Today, I want to focus our attention on something so basic, so fundamental, that I think all countries, all institutions should be thinking and considering as part of this strategy going forward. I will begin in this way. A few days ago, I was sitting with my very small 5-year-old son and began to explain and share with him nursery rhymes. And one of the nursery rhymes that we were discussing together and he was learning was the nursery rhyme Humpty Dumpty. At first, it was very fun to talk about this egg-shaped creature called Humpty Dumpty. But as I repeated it over and over to him and thought about the words I was saying, it dawned on me the message that was hidden in this very simple nursery rhyme. So the nursery rhyme, as we all know, says Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall, Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. And then it says all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. It gives me an illustration of the kind of world we're living in coming out of the pandemic, where a world, some would argue, has been fractured or broken, and there's so many issues, social, economic, political, that are happening. How can we bring our world together again? The nursery rhyme is powerful in its interpretation, perhaps, of the world we live in, where Humpty Dumpty is now broken into so many pieces and fragmented all over. How can we ever bring our world together again? But alas, the real tragedy of that nursery rhyme that I taught to my small son is not that Humpty Dumpty fell, or even that Humpty Dumpty was broken into small pieces. The genuine and real tragedy, the challenge I present to us today, is that all the king's horses and all the king's men, the best that the nation could put together, the best minds, the best talents, the best abilities, could not put Humpty together again. They were bereft of solutions and ideas. They could not solve the problem of Humpty Dumpty. Today, on this very simple note, I offer perhaps a consideration, a solution for us who are the most intelligent and brilliant minds across the world, across all continents. How can we think through the problems that define our day and in an unlike fashion, the story of Humpty Dumpty put our world together again? And so how do we do this? Today I offer one simple solution for consideration, and it is bound up into a concept in the Secretariat we call youth mainstreaming. What is youth mainstreaming? For us in the Secretariat, youth mainstreaming is simply a strategy, an approach, a way of seeing the world we live in that attempts to bridge this issue of intergenerational equity and justice, that enables young people to be a part of and to define the world that they live in now and the world that they want to see for the future. For us, youth mainstreaming is transformational. It is inclusive. It's a strategy that is consciously proactive. It's thinking about the world it wants to create, and it's actively doing something about it. It's a strategy that places young people right at the center of our development thinking and planning, especially now as we emerge from this very gruesome pandemic. It transforms legislation, it transforms policy, it transforms programs, it transforms the way we design, analyze, implement, and then monitor and evaluate programs. Youth mainstreaming goes beyond the discrete empowerment strategies of the youth sector that we've talked about. It enables a cross-sectoral collaboration. It coherently brings together different strategies, both vertically and horizontally. It enables appropriate and relevant youth participation strategies at the appropriate time. And it allows for youth policy to be right at the heart of the goals that we think about, the SDG goals in particular right now. Youth mainstreaming has significant benefits for any society, any institution that attempts to adhere to its principles. It catalyzes, perhaps I would argue, a long-term view for everyone. It allows us to think beyond the here and now, to think through, well, how are we going to create for the future? The kind of institution, the kind of society, the kind of world we want to see. It creates efficiency. It's a second benefit. It allows duplication and overlap to be, cut out, and allows for the efficient resource allocation. It reduces poverty, and I want to spend a little bit of time looking at how we interpret overall policy and how we think about the world and what is our strategy for poverty eradication. But youth mainstreaming contributes to helping us think about strategies related to poverty reduction. And of course, most definitely, it enhances social cohesion. It brings the whole of society together, men and women, boys and girls of different ages, of different periods of time across different places. It brings people together with one view in mind of making our society a better place to live in. And this is important because I think looking in the world we live, particularly in the global south, the youth populations are significant. In some countries, more than 60% of the population are young. I was just in Rwanda, and the president was saying to us 71% of the population of that country is under the age of 30. In some other African member states, such as Uganda, we have 78% of the population being under 30. And what this means is that as we begin to reimagine how society or the whole of the economy or the whole of a country operates going into the future, coming out of a pandemic, we must certainly consider the perspectives as they relate to young people. We must consider these perspectives as related to young people because of this demographic imperative. The fact that if we're going to treat with health or education or social protection, or indeed just, road reconstruction, we must think what impact this will have on the majority of the population. And I would argue in many cases that is the population of youth. So I've shared with you what youth mainstreaming is, a strategy for bridging intergenerational equity and justice, a strategy that is transformative, a strategy that is forward-thinking and constructively proactive, that it has benefits around reducing or creating efficiencies, a strategy for thinking long-term. I've shared with you that it has the potential to bring whole of societies together in social cohesion. And it is useful because within the context of the SDGs, we have framed our youth mainstreaming strategy on the principles of Goal 16, where whole institutions do need to now be thinking more strategically about policy formation in a way that involves young people. We've also thought about, Goal 10, the critical Goal 10 of reducing inequalities as core principles upon which this youth mainstreaming strategy that we speak about needs to focus. And so today, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, we offer to the world this concept of youth mainstreaming as one way to begin to reimagine the kind of world we want to see. Today, as we think about putting Humpty together again, we offer this strategy because we believe that given the challenges our world faces, we must engage with young people. Let's look at a few examples of where this makes good sense. In climate change, the debate that rages on about the kind of world we want to see, a sustainable, prosperous world, the debate for many still excludes the strong and very carefully thought out voices of young people. In fact, this as a single area of policy focus should make the most sense. Who it is that will inherit the world in the next 30 to 50 years? Is it those persons who are now arguing at the table, debating on the economic and possible sustainable solutions? Or is it the younger people who, for them, it's a real threat? The challenge that they will see 30 to 50 years from now will be the kind of world that is not having a good life. The challenge we have in the climate change discussion is that young people have been crying out, calling for their voice to be heard in this debate. Primarily, this will be a youth mainstreaming strategy that we could apply here to bring the voices of young people into such debate. But what about other things? We know, for example, that mortality on our roads is hugely impactful to the lives of young people, that more young people are dying on our roads now than perhaps ever before. But as we think about road reconstruction all across the world, as we lay out highways for the future, are we thinking about what young people's perspective on this could be? In simple things such as this, it makes sense to consider and involve and include young people within the context of youth mainstreaming. And I could go on in so many other areas. What about justice reform? What about in the finances? What about as we discuss peaceful solutions? What about as we discuss education and health? Are we including young people right at the heart of this debate? And I submit to you that if we are to bring Humpty together or Fractured World together, we must include the voices and perspectives of young people. And a few examples of how this could work, and I know the panel that follows after this will give some examples of how this is working. But just to give a few cases, if we're to do mainstreaming in an appropriate way, there are some countries that are already thinking about this in very strategic ways. A country like Uganda, I mentioned them before, already given their population dynamic, has created enough spaces in the National Assembly, in the Parliament, if you will, for young people to take their rightful place alongside all others. So they've reserved seats just to be filled by young MPs who will then bring the perspectives of young people into the heart of the legislative process. And there are many other countries who are now forming interministerial committees where ministers of all sectors are sitting together around the table with the youth ministry or department, and they're thinking now cooperatively, proactively about how to involve young people into the thinking and planning for national development. And perhaps you will want to also think about strategies where young people are forming their national institutions, their councils, their student bodies, and are asking for a seat at the table where they can bring their policy perspective, not just at a national level, but also at the regional level, at a country level, and even at the community level. And what about into your homes? Does your child or children get a chance to share their perspective? What about when you're going on holiday? Do you consult them? You're going to move house, change communities, buy a new house, buy new furniture. Do you involve the young people in all of these decisions? Because that's where it begins. If we are to reorder our society for the future, if we are to bring all voices in, even the voice of youth, we must begin at the home, at the very nucleus of society, to be much more, proactive about bringing the youth voice, the children's voice into the discussion. The world is now past the stage where we talk about children are to be seen and not heard. Today we know for sure that wisdom no longer inhabits the mind of the elderly, but wisdom can also be found in the thoughts and perspectives of young people. So my plea to everyone hearing my voice in this very important summit: involve youth, think youth, get young people involved, not just as an add-on, but meaningfully, intentionally think about how you can reorder your institution and society so that it involves young people. And perhaps, just perhaps, if we begin to consider these strategies intentionally, proactively, our societies will begin to see a kind of transformation post-COVID that we have been longing for. We'll begin to see the kind of world where young people are not just protesting, asking for their voice to be heard, but are sitting at the table constructively, co-creating the kind of world they want to see. Perhaps if we intentionally do this, we can begin to put Humpty Dumpty together again. And so I'm perhaps very proud of our Commonwealth heads of government, who just last week sat down together with our young people face to face and discussed, not as a tokenistic activity, but meaningfully engaging in constructive dialogue about the world we want to see. And they listened well, and they discussed and debated together. And at the end of that entire process, our heads of government determined that 2023 should be a year dedicated to young people. And so 2023 will be a year in the Commonwealth dedicated to youth and youth development. And I call on all others who are hearing my voice to join in this year of youth. We hope that will bring resurgence and new thought and perspectives for young people all over the world as we try to build a world fit for the future. Thank you, and I hope that you will have a fruitful discussion